The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So hello everyone. We'll get started here in a few, maybe in a few seconds, maybe another minute or so to let people assemble. We're running a little late. Okay, let's get started. So welcome everyone. This webinar is part of a series on construction best practices, and there are many business processes a construction company deals with in day-to-day operations. You can see on the slide the major phases shown here are bidding, pre-construction, and construction. Under each, there are 3 or more business processes. Today we're focusing on job costing, and let's get going. Today's Job Costing Best Practices is sponsored by Silvertrek and Viewpoint. My name is Phil Bride. I am a business consultant and marketing manager for Silvertrek with expertise in business processes, execution, and business growth. Michael Kelly, president of Silvertrek Systems, is here also. Michael is an expert in automation solutions for the back office, accounting, and related systems. He'll also cover job costing solutions in the second half of this. So let's get started.
Sounds good.
Today we're discussing job costing and the components. We're going to cover components of job costing. That's materials, labor, overhead, and oh yes, don't forget about it, profit margin, and the effects of not having job costing in place. An often heard comment is it just takes too much time to go through all this. And then best practices of job costing, like categorizing costs and reporting. Then the 5 key elements of job costing. So let's spend a moment and talk about the components of job costs. Of course, every job has costs. For materials, lumber, concrete, sheetrock, siding, and a ton of miscellaneous supplies. In this process, we do phase and cost code assignments for all the materials involved. Then, of course, the cost of the item has to be tied to the phase and the cost codes too. So labor must be accounted for as well. It can be a huge component of each job. Cost code assignments are made for labor. If there are different labor rates for different work, then unique phase or cost codes are assigned. And of course, the labor rates by skill and experience are assigned. It's often important to assign the prevailing wages for your location. For example, here in Oregon, the Bureau of Labor and Industries publishes the prevailing wage rates required for public works projects. You can easily look these up in your state. And the last is the hours spent on a job. These will show up in field reports in assigned phase or cost codes. Also include overhead. Overhead includes things like incidental commodity materials, tool repairs, replacement, maintenance, and of course supervisor costs. It's got to be consistently applied though, and often a percent of the cost is used. It can vary from 5% to maybe 30%, and I've been hearing lately people using 20%. So please don't forget to add in profits. It's why you're in business, and it funds future growth, and is kind of the point of having a company. Companies I've spoken with use anywhere from 8 to 20%, depending on the risk, for the profit margin and the competition on the job. Some jobs, like public works, specify your overhead and profit margins. They just tell you what you're going to make. It becomes crucial to track every expense and every hour in field reports. And by the way, daily is an excellent habit to get in if you've got jobs happening on a daily basis. It seems like a lot of work and a pain, and yes, it can be, but it really does pay off. So it does take time, especially to catch up if you haven't set up phase and cost codes, and more importantly, the processes and culture of tracking. Do not underestimate the importance of culture in changing a process. Often to get a process, often we want to automate processes, and in automating a process, if you don't have that process in place ahead of time, you're going to be swimming upstream and fighting battles all the time. Maybe not against people, but against just the knowledge and the comfort level of going through the process. So if you've ever asked yourself any of these questions or similar questions, you're most likely suffering from profit fade, where costs incrementally creep up in small purchases, change orders maybe go unbilled, overtime sneaks in, and maybe it's just simply missed on a job estimate. We're all busy, but proper job costing can be where your profits show up, and you can cover overhead and costs in a smoother way while you're going through this whole process, while you're going through the job, rather. So let's talk about best practices. First is to track all the costs. I mentioned that. Materials, labor, overhead. Remember, lots of costs over a 3-month job or a 6-month job could easily eat up your profits if they're not factored in. So factor in those, even the small costs. Monitor the costs during the job. Field reports by your project managers or whoever's acting as the project manager becomes crucial in this whole thing. Once you get in the habit, it can be as simple and just a few minutes each day while it's fresh in your mind. So assign the job, the phase, or cost codes in these field reports. Put in a brief description, and it's an excellent log of your job. Don't forget the overhead each time. Overhead is crucial in this. You could do this in Excel or on paper. I've done it in Excel, and it's not too hard for one small job at a time. But I can tell you I'd be very unhappy using Excel across lots of jobs with lots of costs and keeping track of all the cost updates. So in today's automated world, best practices is really to use technology built to simplify this effort and choose a good, reliable piece of software. You'll also get reports during the projects, and you'll be highly informed and ready for the next ones. The beauty is you can use the information for your next estimates, and you might be pleasantly surprised as your estimates become more accurate over time. So here you go, a nice straightforward process to implement job costing, 1 through 7. First is define your goals. Yes, we all know it's to make more money, but that's simply not good enough in defining goals for any project. So the question is, are you talking about cash flow, profit, future profits? Maybe you want to stop the bleeding today. And so some questions to ask, or some topics to keep in mind, is what level of detail are you willing to pay for? The more detail you want, the more codes, and the more you define and track the costs, the more time and work to get it, and costs and additional costs to get this information. Excuse me. Some goals that people have are to get more profit, maybe to get more better cash management, better cash flow, prepare for the next slowdown, or maybe even pay for the next generation of workers to come in and get ahead of the game, get ahead of some of the competition out there, maybe to get more competitive in the market. Setting these goals set you up beautifully for the rest of the project, so the rest of the project becomes obvious when you come to decision points. So next is to set up your job phase and cost codes and tie them into a process. Set up the cost tracking process. That includes field reports, collecting receipts, tracking purchases, maybe moving to a purchase order, PO system. Then set up your change order process, very important. Create over-under billing reports or job billing reports, committed costs. Get them scheduled on a regular basis so you know what's happening. This next one is about cadence also. watching things regularly. Set weekly report review with key people, whether if you're a larger company with project managers, accountants, the owners, the GM, ops managers. If you're a small company, it's just you and the key guy. You two sit down and review this stuff and decide what's absolutely necessary. By the way, this gives you a chance to take action before the project is done if you spot issues. Then the last piece is really automate this process. It's much like accountants. Accountants do not learn accounting by buying an accounting package. They learn it ahead of time, then learn to use the accounting package. So work through the process, get some stuff going early on, which will help the automation of a process tremendously. So in setting up a job costing process or refining one, these are the 5 key elements. The job, the phase, and cost codes are important to set up properly. There's plenty of expertise available to get these set up to meet your goals. Distribute the cost to the GL into your accounting system properly. Most good job costing systems do that automatically. And this is where the power of job costing can really shine. Track these costs, including the small costs and overhead, and don't forget to add in your profit margin. Make that part of the whole system. Deal with change orders. These can break the back and do break the back of many construction companies, even in good times, just not dealing with change orders. And then get familiar with WIP and the over-under billing. It will pay off. So here's the lowdown on phases and cost codes. Master format is a standard established and published by CSI, and what it does is it standardizes these codes throughout the industry. It consists of, first big thing is division or phase codes. You'll often see 2 to 3 digit codes that covers categories of codes, and there's 16 commonly used divisions or categories. The next is the cost code. You'll often see 3, 4, or 5 digits here, and it's assigned to specific labor and materials. And then there's the type, like labor, materials, overhead, equipment, and a small set of other items. Often in systems, you'll see these combined into one string or one code, such as phase, that pulls together the phase code and the cost code into one. It's interesting that there are 16 major categories of codes that cover pretty much everything you'll need to build a code structure that fits industry best practices. Now, there are experts in cost codes and software that help simplify the process and zero in, because you don't need all of them. There are hundreds, maybe a couple thousand of these things. You just need what you need, and so the idea is to get the right ones and organize the right way. Some of the more common division codes used is 1 for general requirements. Pretty much everybody has that. 3 for concrete, 6 wood. This is where framing does fall. And there are others like 7 for moisture control, 8 for doors and windows, 9 for finishes, and there's another one for electrical. I think it's 16. Cassell Consulting has a very good listing of these with a depth of understanding to help assign these codes properly for the company, by the way. And some of the information came from Cassell Consulting. This Cassell. This is probably way more than you need to know, especially if you get help, but it's always good to have a high-level understanding of what's needed or refresh your understanding if you know it already. The key is to tie the contract terms for a job to the cost codes and the GL. So the contract terms are in the middle, cost codes on the left, and GL on the right. You tie the cost codes into the contract terms, and of course the contract terms you tie to GL accounts. That's part of what we do with accounting. But the key is to tie these cost codes into them also. Then you can track job costs during the job, and you can track differences between actual costs and the estimated or contract costs, which will then tell you how your estimates and how well your estimates are, and helps you improve next round. You can also allocate costs to the right jobs through the cost codes to get an accurate picture of how much you spend on a job. Actually, um, there are job codes in addition, so every job is numbered, like 01 through 100 or whatever you have, 3 digits or 4 digits, depending on how many customers you think you'll have, and just keep counting up and keep adding a new job code. And that gets tacked to the cost code or phase code, and you can track the whole thing. Getting this process down is key and can be painstaking if you've got a lot going on. Luckily, there are solutions which help tremendously. So tracking the cost is the whole point of setting this stuff up, so you can see exactly where each job sits from a profit point of view. This lets you see your estimate compared to projected results and your percent complete on each job. This can and it lets you do something about profit and cost issues early in the project. So a good job costing system gives you an excellent picture during jobs. And who knows, you might be able to negotiate better loan terms, contract terms with owners or subs if you're armed with this type of information and have it at your fingertips. Change orders seem to be the bane of many contractors. And there seems to be a lot of reluctance to hit owners up for changes that are requested on the fly for fear of not nickel and diming them or just simply wanting to keep a good customer happy. Unfortunately, without good change order process in place, expectations are that you'll do the work and project creep sets in and you end up working for free. So get a policy in place by specifying a change order process. Determine the level or number of changes above which you're going to issue change orders. Get this into the contract up front and point it out to the owner. Get the owner to agree and understand what your process is. Decide on a premium for change orders and clarify the sign-off process. Clarify the billing and collection process to the owners and your staff. Make sure your staff understands, everybody in the company understands what it is. In practice, some people do this well and some don't. This can affect your profit and could pay off immediately if you put a change order process in place that is very well articulated and understood. It doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be there. So a good way to understand when change orders are warranted or where they can really make an impact is the levels is doing WIP and over under billing reports. And what I'm showing you here is just a quick synopsis. I'm not going to dive into it too much here since we have a complimentary class just on this topic and training on this topic. So briefly and in a nutshell, the lower straight red line is your costs over time of a job. So time is across the horizontal. The vertical is dollars. The difference is, and the blue line above is your earnings or revenue on the job, the blue straight line going up. The difference is your profit. That's the easy part. Makes sense. You get it. 1, 2, and 3 are the months that you bill it out. This is stuff developed by Michael, by the way. Not the over-under billing, but the explanation in the graph, and he does an excellent job in his training on this. But I'm just going to hit it very quickly. The green stair step is the billing. Number 1 shows you've billed more than the revenue you've earned on the job, and so you're cash flush. And the whole issue comes down to the fact that you bill and collect cash in chunks. You don't do it smoothly on a daily basis. You do it on a 2-week, 4-week, 2-month period, whatever it is, when you bill. So that means at times you're cash flush, and at other times you're short on cash. 2, you're short on cash, and 3, you finally end up smoothing out and everything evens out. So overbilling can result in having a lot of extra cash, and because it's there, sometimes guys go out and buy new equipment or buy things they may not need. Cash flush and not prepping for the underbilling point, which invariably occurs, it can be a problem. So if you want to know more on this, stay tuned for upcoming classes and other useful topics. So in review, the 5 elements: establish job phase cost codes, distribute the cost to the GL, track the costs with good reports, key reports like the billing and overrun job billing, over under billing, and commitments. Put a change order process in place and follow it, and then do the WIP and over under billing. Just do that process. And with that, I would like to pass this off to Michael, president of Silvertrack Systems, who will cover solutions that we've talked about. By the way, please post questions in the chat, and we'll answer them as we see them pop up and they become as we see them. So it's all yours, Michael. I'm making you presenter.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, that was great. And just like Phil said, this is a real situation for a lot of people here, trying to understand how that they can actually make it so that their job costing actually makes sense. How does it tie to my GL? My accountants are asking me for one thing, my bonding agent's asking me for something. How can I actually make this, into a reality? Well, there is a lot of different softwares out there. Silvertrack, as a company, we do construction accounting services, so we see a lot of these. We've worked with the smaller construction companies, accounting softwares like Foundation Computeries, as Pro Contractor is another one, and all the way up to some of the bigger products like Spectrum, Sage 300, and really what we've found to be one of the best ones out there is what I'm going to show you today, just so you can understand a little bit of what Phil was talking about, which is Viewpoint's Vista product. So this is a product that you can see here. I have a test company going, and a good accounting system will have lots of programs. There'll be things that you can do from payroll to project management, lots of purchase order. Things can get really overwhelming really quickly. But in general, from a project management perspective and from a job costing best practice perspective, you have to ask yourself, does my system allow me to track at a project level? Does it allow me to track how much I've billed? Does it allow me to track how much I expect to spend, just like he was talking about earlier, at a phase, cost code, and cost type level? And here we can see that in this simple report, which I've run from Vista, I have my total costs here. I have my total billings, and at this point in the game, I've billed $7 million. And I've only spent 14,000, so I'm pretty golden here. But we can actually drill down in these really good systems like this. We can actually drill down and see not only that we spent $14,000, but that we spent $2,300 for materials. And drilling down into here, we can see where we've spent this. So this is a cost type level. We can actually see that in other, this would be a phase level, we've spent $1,600 for Alaska Airlines, and then actually drill into this and see the actual report that generated this PDF that generated this cost through our accounts payable system. So we're able to actually drill down into the actual detail, get down to a PDF level that was maybe marked up by somebody before they sent it in, and then also drill out, kind of zoom back out again and say, now that I know this, how does it affect everything? How does this tie into the other types of cost types, the other cost codes, and be able to see how this compares to how much we've billed and how much our projected revenue is. So we have we have the ability to tie everything together in this world-class job costing system and put it in one place so that from a project management perspective, you never lose track of your job. You never end up in a position where you're not able to follow those best practices. Now, of course, from company to company, and from type of construction, different vertical, even within, like, say, if you're an electrical contractor, there's all of the different nuances of electrical contractors. You have the ability to change the cost types that you want to track. I've had excavation contractors say, I need to be able to track my trucking. And I've had electrical contractors tell me, well, I don't really necessarily need to have my equipment on there, but what was really important is that I split out my burden from my labor, so I can really get really detailed on how I'm estimating and how I'm tracking my labor costs, because that's my biggest cost. And so in this system, of course, we have our standard cost types, and we have our standard, once we drill into this, we have our standard phase codes and our standard cost codes, but we're also able to modify this, and we're able to say, for my company, this is what makes sense. And that's what Phil was talking about earlier about when you want to design things, you want to first start with, what do I need? What do I want? What are the best practices? And then roll it into an accounting system, a job costing system that allows you to make those a reality, that allows you to look at, to drill down all the way to the actual PDF and be able to see on job by job, how am I doing? How is this, what's my bill to date? For Pilot Electric, what is my bill to date? How many payables do I have to pay out? What are my committed costs? What is my revenue? What is my billing? And be able to see right at a glance how well you're doing, and then tie it back in once this job finishes. Then me, the Pilot Electric, I can take this job and say, okay, this is how I did. And in this situation, if I could really bill $7 million on 14,000, I would want to figure out how I can do more of those, and figure out what went wrong, what went right on that job, apply it using the CSI codes and the master format to my next bid, and say, well, we did 35 of these units before, and it took us this many man hours. It'll probably take us approximately the same amount again, and it allows you to all the time be getting better, all the time that you're running the jobs, and all the time that you're bidding the next ones. So real briefly, this is just a standard report. We see a lot of people that are coming off of old Sage products really liking this report because it brings everything together. But of course, there's an immense amount of work that goes into making this work on your end, making sure that you have the best practices already set up. And if you don't already have the best practices set up, understanding what is out there, what is already in the system, and during implementation process, understanding what you have to do to make this work for your company. So that's briefly just one real quick glimpse into what a project manager in an accounting system that is already up and running looks like. I don't have any more from this side of things, otherwise it'll turn into a full-blown infomercial on exactly what Vista does. I just wanted to give you an example of how it can work inside of a world-class accounting system. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Phil.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So if you have questions, hang on. So if you have questions, send them in to either Michael or myself. And with that, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. If you'd like to learn more about these business best practices, contact me, Phil at philbride.com, or get more in-depth information on job costing solutions, contact Michael at silvertreksystems.com. And by the way, we do work very closely together, so it really doesn't matter who you contact. We'll get the right information to you. So we'd love to show you how you can put job costing to work for you in a way that really works well for your situation. And with that, thanks and have a great day. Michael, you want to say anything to wrap up too?
No, that's it from my side. Thank you very much for coming. And as we roll into Christmas, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone. Okay, good. I didn't see any chats come through. So thanks. If you think of something else later, feel free to email us. And
Absolutely.
With that, we're going to sign off. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.